We can start. Okay. Good morning. I am Miklos Antic. I am the EGEC president, and I welcome you to the webinar addressing high energy prices and geothermal as the missing piece to prevent future crises. This event will explore how geothermal energy technologies, which provide reliable and flexibility energy and electricity and heating and cooling, can be a key for flexibility for the integrated energy systems. We have 5 distinguished speakers today, among which Madame Kadri Simons, Commissioner for Energy from the European Commission, Madame Claudia Gamon, Member of the European Parliament, Mr. Nicolas González Cesares, Member of the European Parliament, Mr. Pierre Brossolet, CEO of Group Arverne, and last but not least, Philippe Dumas, Secretary General of EGEC Geothermal. We could not find better moderator for this session as Sanjeev Kumar, Head of Policy. I have now the pleasure to give the floor to Madame Kadri Simons to address us today, the keynote speech. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for inviting me to speak today. Last summer, we put forward an extremely ambitious package of climate legislation. This was a cross-sectoral vision for how to reduce our emissions significantly by 2030 so that the next generation can live in a time of a climate-neutral Europe. And of course, energy has one of the biggest roles to play in making this a reality. Our target is to almost double the current share of renewables in the energy mix in less than a decade by reaching a share of at least 40% in 2030. Another goal is to increase our energy efficiency savings target. In December 2021, we adopted a follow-up to our July package with proposals for legislation to decarbonize buildings, gas markets, and hydrogen. Renewable energy is central to achieving these goals on climate security of supply and energy price stability. An important part of the Fit for 55 package is that we are revising our key legislation to reinforce the current system of measures on renewable energy and strengthen the renewable targets for the EU overall. And we already came a long way. Today, about 23% of the EU's total energy consumption and 37% of our electricity comes from renewables. But certain sectors lag behind, and we are not going far enough. And we are not going fast enough. And I want to pause for a moment here. When we adopted these packages, Europe and the world was a different place. Since then, war has returned to our continent. In recent months, energy has increasingly been wielded as a geopolitical weapon by Putin's government. And the ripple effect is sending shockwaves across Europe's energy system. We are seeing low flows of gas combined with storage kept historically low. It contributed to pushing our energy prices sky high and keeping them there. It has significantly reduced the supply of energy to our continent, and there is a constant threat of damage to critical infrastructure. For years, we have known about our changing climate and that renewables will have a starring role in fighting it. Now, with these recent developments, deploying renewables takes on an even more urgent need. Security of supply is an immediate consideration. Renewables, including geothermal, are now the key to reducing our dependence on Russian fossil fuels and shaping our own self-determined energy future, along with redoubling our efforts in energy efficiency. This week, we adopted a communication to that effect. Actually, it was already last week. In the communication, the Commission sets out the vision for reducing dependencies of Russian energy. A very important element of that communication is permitting, and I'll come back to this in a moment. But before I do, I want to set the geothermal energy scene. The time has waste geothermal potential. Benefits of this sector has not been well understood, and now is the time to learn. Europe needs to develop and take the full range of benefits of geothermal energy for renewable heating, for renewable cooling, and renewable electricity, for thermal storage, for lithium production, and for electric grid flexibility services in Europe's electricity networks. Before the focus was on regions known for geothermal activity, we now need to realize that geothermal energy is available and can be harnessed everywhere in Europe. It can help us to reduce our costs for supplying renewables to our cities, and it is one of the main renewable sources of heat and steam for industry. So the possibilities are great, but especially for heating. It has the potential to be one of the main candidates replacing gas and coal in heating. Geothermal heat pumps are a proven technology, highly efficient, and provide a secure heating supply even in cold climates at stable and moderate prices. And earlier, I mentioned the Fit for 55 package. It includes a lot to offer the geothermal industry and vice versa. Geothermal energy will benefit from the strengthened targets under RED II for heating and cooling and buildings. And developing this energy source will be essential to reaching some of the targets under the directive. As an energy source, it's well suited to produce electricity in a stable and flexible way. That's why countries in Europe's geothermal basins, like France, Germany, Italy, Hungary, and Slovakia, have already harnessed it for that purpose. It also offers cheap seasonal thermal storage as well as flexibility for the electric grid. So if we look at what a Europe with more renewables, including geothermal, looks like, we will see a Europe less vulnerable to energy price shocks, and a Europe with a more secure supply of energy, especially a viable, affordable alternative to fossil fuels, and a Europe with a boosted local economy based on jobs that produce, on average, 60% more value added per employee than in the rest of the economy. This is the image of success that we are aspiring to. And of course, there are barriers. These barriers won't remove themselves. One of the biggest is permitting, where we need to do more. And we are soon coming out with additional proposals to push for a faster transition, for example, by speeding up the permitting process for renewables. We can't expect to boost renewables massively if getting a permit to build a project takes years, in some cases even 7 years. So simplifying and speeding up the procedures for issuing permits is essential for all renewables, including geothermal, and will be key for reaching our ambition for 2030 and beyond. In May, we will publish a recommendation on faster permitting for renewable projects, and we will work to remove obstacles, including those that may even come from our own legislation. On this point, I want to say thank you. I know the substantial contribution of EGEC on geothermal best practices has been a huge help and very welcomed on our side. Another barrier is transportation of existing, another barrier is a transposition of existing legislation, ensuring the Renewable Energy Directive is properly transposed in the foundation of the current review. And that makes it the first step towards achieving simplification and shortening of permitting process. And unfortunately, most member states have not fully transposed the directive, even though the deadline was June last year. So my services are working now hard to ensure we make good progress here. Ladies and gentlemen, let's not allow these barriers to get in the way of what could be a revolution in the geothermal energy field. We are lucky as Europeans to inhabit land that provides a cheap, clean, and renewable source of energy. Our mistake has been not making the most of this in the past. So let's learn from that mistake, not repeat it. This will go a long way towards both securing our supply of energy and fighting our changing climate. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Commissioner Simpson. That was a very welcome words, and certainly in the crisis that we're in at the moment, on behalf of the entire geothermal community and everybody taking part in this conference, I thank you very, very much for the leadership that you're showing. It's important that we have strong leadership, and you are certainly turning up and helping us believe in the value of Europe more than we've ever seen before, certainly in my lifetime. I'd like to open the floor to our distinguished panelists, Mr. Gonzalez Cesar from the Social and Democrat group within the European Parliament, Ms. Claudia Gamon from the Renew Europe group, Mr. Pierre Brossolette, the CEO of Averna Group, or President of Lithium de France, and of course Philippe Dumas, the Secretary General of EGEC. Considering that the Commissioner is under time pressure and may not be able to stay with us for much longer, I was wondering if any member of the panel would like to respond directly to some of the very valuable and rich remarks that the Commissioner made. If you'd like to do so, please turn your camera on, speaker, and jump straight in.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Madam Commissioner, for taking the lead and telling us that how geothermal can be important for decarbonizing our energy system. And in this respect, I just want to complete your observation that more than 50% of our primary energy need in Europe is used for heating. And geothermal can be the main brick in replacing fossil fuels for heating and cooling in Europe. And the other importance of this fast development would be motivated by a quick political decision from all the countries to speed up permitting, as it has been said, and also allocate respective budgets to speed up development of geothermal energy. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Miklos. Whilst our other panel members are gathering their thoughts together, I'd like to abuse my position as the chair, just to maybe make one addition or suggestion in the vast catalogue of things that you've proposed within the Repower Europe group. All of these proposals are very, very good and will help move the needle when it comes to renewables, energy efficiency, and kind of improving our energy dependence. One element, however, when it comes to large-scale heat decarbonisation is really empowering our local authorities and the distribution system operators to actually plan the transition, to kind of, the switch from the fossil infrastructure to the renewable infrastructure. And I'd be keen to see if this is also going to be something that you'll be looking at when it comes to any additional follow-up measures, either within the Fit for 55 package that's on the table, or also other ideas that may be coming up in the upcoming plan that's mentioned in the Repower Europe communication.
Well, as you saw from last week's communication, we promised to deliver follow-up legislative proposals in upcoming months. And of course, on top of that, there is right now process of Fit for 55, where Parliament and Council are formulating their positions, and most likely we have to be ready for proposals to raise our ambitions in both directives there. And of course, to achieve higher targets, we need to find additional financing. So in cooperation with my colleagues who are responsible for budget, we do our best to encourage member states to use the funds that they have not decided to use yet under the recovery funds. So grant part is already covered with pretty good recovery plans, but there is also a loan part that they could use to modernize and decarbonize their energy systems. So this is ongoing work, and right now at this very moment, everybody understands that we have to speed up the process that helps us to get rid of imported fossil fuels significantly faster than under normal circumstances we plan to.
Yes, well, that's very, very welcome words. Pierre, if you don't mind me putting you on the spot, I mean, from the perspective of a lithium producer within Europe, what are the kind of key things that you would need to see from the permitting procedures that are upcoming, or anything else that would help drive the sustainable production of lithium within Europe?
Yeah, thank you. From our perspective, it's clear that one of the main hurdles and one of the main barriers that we do have is the administrative, let's say, inertia that we are suffering from let's say the administration, and we get our license, as you know, in several months, and we clearly need basically to get our license and to get the authorization to explore more rapidly than basically what we have now, at least in France, because we are a French company and our application is in Alsace du Nord, as I will show you. That's the first point. You know that the lithium is a geothermal lithium, so the first step in our roadmap is to get the geothermal licenses, and the process is long. So that one of the main things is that if we could accelerate all this administrative authorization, it will be great. Today, it's more or less between 24 months to get an exploration license. So it's definitely too long. I would say that the main point.
Thank you very much, Pierre. Maybe I can bring Claudia in now. For people who are not familiar, Claudia Hamon was one of the key architects of a drive to include renewable district heating within the recent Trans-European for Energy Networks legislation. This is a crucial, if we're going to decarbonize cities, if we're going to decarbonize local communities and rural areas, then actually renewable district heating infrastructure becomes a critical aspect in this transition. And I'm curious to know from Claudia whether you are happy to bring back some of the ideas that we had within the 10E into the upcoming discussions on the Fit for 55. I know there are many amendments that have been proposed already in both the MV and the ITRE committees. Is this something that you're happy to champion once more, Claudia?
Yeah, thank you. Well, I want to thank the Commissioner for her remarks, because I do think that it's great that Commission is picking up on the topic, because we do need to speed up the development. And I think it's unfortunate that it's not already, or not in the space that it deserves, also in the RED III, but this is something that we can work on, of course, in the Parliament. And while I would have loved to have it in 10E in the final in the final compromise as it stands now after the trilogues, I think it was already a success that we managed to push it as far as it went in the discussion. However, what I noticed is that we are sort of at a crossroads, I think, in how we talk about the energy system in Europe, and how we managed to move from the old way of looking at the grid, the old way of looking at energy production, to seeing that a renewables-based system is just of a different nature. It's very decentralized. It needs a different infrastructure, and it needs different regulatory support. And my point to include it in 10E, for example, I thought it really, I thought it, to be a bit annoying, those arguments that, well, this is not necessarily physical cross-border infrastructure, because I think we need to move away from the view that a physical cross-border infrastructure can only be the grid itself, or can only be a pipeline. We have to see it that large geothermal installations have a tremendous impact on the grid in a cross-border nature. They service the grid in a cross-border nature, and and should be seen as cross-border infrastructure, these large installations. And I do think that we should support, especially moving towards geothermal in larger urban areas in a huge way. When I look at what the city of Vienna is doing now, for example, my party is in the local government in the city of Vienna, and Wien Energie, the local energy provider, did a study and found a large thermal water reservoir underneath the city. That's when they use only 25% of the potential that they have. They can heat up to 100,000 households in the next 10 years. That is an incredible development. But looking at the crisis that we are in now, I do wonder whether or not also the Commission can also support the member states in having a kind of, and please forgive my choice of words, but I think we have to talk about this, a warlike general mobilization of all the potential that we have in order to install as many heat pumps and geothermal installations that we can in Europe. We are in a race against time, and I do think that we have to see what can we mobilize in terms of human resources to do that, in terms of material that we would need. And I do think that this needs an immense amount of coordination, and we have to start this year. Next year at the latest, it will need to be done. And I think it is the only way where we can also spend money now and invest money now that won't be a stranded asset in 10 years or 20 years time. It's an investment in the future that we speed up, that we time travel to today, more or less. It's something that we would spend anyhow. We have to spend this money anyhow in making heating renewable in the next 10, 20, 30 years. So why not do it now? All this debate about how we can move away to different sources of gas, I understand that. I understand that, especially in the short term. But we have to be aware of how we spend our money. This is also very much from a liberal standpoint, that there are hard times ahead, even more important that we spend wisely, but fast.
I agree. I think we all agree with just about everything you said. I think there's one really pertinent point, which I just want to stress, which is that we shouldn't see this as a cost, but actual investment. And I think if we get this mindset into when investing in the European economy, not just for the short term, but building a platform for the long term, then it radically changes the way in which we approach the kind of changes that we need. I think part of this is also shifting away from individual appliances to viewing both renewables, geothermal, but other renewables, and energy efficiency as infrastructure projects. And then again, it changes the way in which they're financed, the way in which we discount them, not over a short term, but over longer term, and actually shift the burden away from individuals to, people who manage energy systems. That's the revolution that we need to go down. I'd like to bring in Nicholas Gonzalez-Cesar at this moment. What were your kind of general reflections on the perception, or the things Ms. Simpson said, and also on the Repower EU communication itself? Nicholas?
Thank you, Sanjeev, and thank you to the European Geothermal Council for the invitation for this webinar. Okay, I think that Repower EU is the consequence of all this energy per month. We were calling for strong coordinated measures to tackle this problem. But since Russia's aggression against Ukraine, it is now clear that Europe must cut its energy dependence on Russia and reduce our dependence as much and as quickly as possible on fossil fuels. This requires rethinking the European energy strategy with rapid short-term measures to, for example, I think now it's important because we need confidence also from citizens. We have to decouple gas prices from the electricity price and ensure the gas supply for the coming winters. But above all, it is time to move towards energy independence. There is a path with each crisis is seen more clearly as the correct one. The EU Green Deal and the Fit for 55 package are essential to protect ourselves from climate change, but they are also crucial to reducing our dependence on foreign energy and fossil fuels. And in these cases, foreign energy from an enemy, because now Russia, not Russia, the people from Russia, but Putin is our enemy when it comes to this important sad conflict that we have now. So our energy dependency is causing that we are fueling Putin's war. We are putting money in his hands. So as I said, it's imperative to decouple electricity prices from gas prices in the short term. Spain and other countries have been demanding and proposing measures in this sense since the end of last summer. And I'm pleased that the Commission has finally presented this Repower EU. Some of the measures are already implemented by Spain in September, like the measures on windfall profits. But I think that this joint measure for gas and gas transport could be a good solution. When it comes to renewables, it is clear that the acceleration of renewables makes more sense than ever. But not only it is enough to increase the objective, like we are doing in the revision of the Renewable Directive. More important, the objective is important. More important are the tools and measures to carry them out, because it's not only about objectives, it's the things that we have to do to comply with these objectives about permitting, public acceptance, but how to speed up all the technologies we need to increase our renewable production. And I think that here, geothermal plays a very relevant role. 50% of the union energy consumption is for heating and cooling. So we must focus here on the efforts to decarbonize this sector. To do this, I have some proposals, some necessary measures. First is increase the directive binding targets for renewable in heating and cooling sector, giving certainty to investors. I think that we also should promote electrification of the low and medium temperature process. Speed up, as was said before, speed up administrative processes and promote heat purchase agreements as proposed by the Commission. And of course, including heating and cooling systems in the energy system integration measures. Capacity to give flexibility to peaks in demand and provide an anti-response to demand that can help a more resilient and efficient energy system. I think that the current prices also make projects attractive to explore the possibilities, for example, of high temperature geothermal for electricity generation. I think that innovation and innovative support schemes should play an important role in its development, where energy resources are more accessible. So I think we are in a very, very, very bad time for people, but in a very good time to speed up renewable development. So this is our commitment now, how to speed up this transition, because it's not only for climate, it's also for our stability and peace, of course.
Thank you so much, Nicholas. There are so many things in there that are worth stressing. But this kind of leads me to the obvious question. I mean, at a European level, we don't have a 100% renewable energy system modeled by the Commission. I mean, given the crisis now, do you think that this becomes one of the priority issues, that we now need to know not just that we increase our numbers, but actually what does this fully renewable and very energy efficient energy system look like? I mean, do you think we should be asking the Commission to come forward with this kind of vision this year?
It could be a good exercise, I guess. I think that we have to think on that. For example, I was thinking when you made this question, I was thinking about, for example, refuel aviation. Okay, it's nothing in common with this file, but in refuel aviation, they set a target of 63% of sustainable aviation fuels. Why are you saying 63% when we are searching for climate neutrality by 2050? So we have to increase this target. I think this is the kind of signal that we have to give to the people and also to the markets. And of course, in the discussion of the renewable directive, we are seeing a lot of references in the draft proposal by the rapporteur with low carbon technologies. This is also a very, very bad signal for the markets and also for the consumers, because we are saying, okay, we are put money, we are putting renewables, but we are opening a back door for low carbon technologies. And low carbon technologies mean gas, and we know what is happening now with gas. So I think this could be a good exercise to imagine and rethink an energy system with a very, very high percentage of renewables. Could be 100%, I guess 100% by 2050, but let's make it feasible.
Yeah. I totally agree with you. Just on the point of kind of the inclusion of low carbon definition within the Renewable Energy Directive. Of course, you know the perspective of EGEC. We would not support that. I'm curious as to whether Claudia, what your views are on. I think we can guess, but I think it's worthwhile just asking you the question. Where do you sit on that?
On low carbon?
Yes.
I don't think it belongs in any kind of renewable legislation. I don't want to negate the reality of some of the decisions that member states have to take. I mean, there would be a perfect scenario that I think we can all agree on how it should work, but the transition is different for many member states. Coming from Austria, we have the luxury of having hydropower. I mean, that is just something that other member states do not have. I have to accept that. I have to accept that the energy mix in France looks very different. And I think EU legislation has to make room for the reality, but not in the renewables legislation. I think we have to be honest about what is what. That is very important for the market also to function properly. And for and especially again from a liberal perspective, I do believe in letting market powers also help us in the transition. But if we are sending the wrong signals by preparing the wrong legislation, the market will not function properly. And so I am very much in favor of having any renewables legislation being truly renewable and leaving room for these questions to be answered in other files.
Excellent, thank you very, very much. I'd like to bring Pierre back into the conversation, and actually Philippe as well. There's two. The first question, actually to Philippe. Nicholas mentioned cooling. Now, given climate change, given the fact that emissions are still increasing globally, cooling becomes much more of an issue, and the efficient design around cooling systems has quite significant impacts. I mean, in terms of if we are going to electrify, both heating and cooling, then we need to pay equal attention to the cooling demand. Philippe, maybe you can give us a few views on how you see cooling impacting our conversation, and where does geothermal fit into this?
Thank you, Sandy, for the question. And indeed, what we see is that cooling is 50% of our energy demand. Cooling is still a small share of that, but it's a growing share. And the issue we have today on cooling is that it's also fossil fuel based, or it's really low efficient systems. And both, we have to look at in both perspectives. We need to develop renewable energy combined with energy efficiency. In geothermal, we are lucky. We are not lucky because we are geothermal. We are lucky because we provide free cooling to the people. It means that from the underground, of course, when you have to activate a heating system, you need heat pumps, you need a district heating system, you need a combined heat and power system. But for cooling, you just need to take from the underground the cooling and you provide to people. So we have this big advantage, and we are lucky to see many good examples in including now what is investigating for his building in Brussels to have these cooling options. But what is the challenge is also to provide that to industry. And it was welcome to see from Mr. Nicolas Gonzalez Cazares the option of heat purchase agreement, which is also for cooling, because when we are also able to provide large quantity of cooling to industry, we will even do a better job to provide efficient system, because the issue here in cooling is to provide efficient systems.
Thank you, Philippe. And I think it's just worth stressing as well that when Nicolas was talking about the situation in Spain, whilst in Brussels, where I live, where we reside at the moment, all through January, February, even March, we've had our heating on. Whereas in Spain and the southern part of Europe, they've actually been having the cooling on, because temperatures in the Mediterranean regions, in the Mediterranean basin, are astronomically high at the moment. Are going to remain so for a long period of time. So it's important that we look at geography when it comes to the focus on heating and the focus on cooling, because it's important to bring those both in. I have Claudia and then Miklos. Claudia, please.
Yeah, maybe just to add to that, I think that we should also, in terms of looking at this from an energy policy perspective, we should be much more engaged with the point of the buildings aspect of this, and what the renovation wave, what insulating new homes, what that has to do with it. Because I think it should always be thought about together. This is a process that should go hand in hand, especially also to be efficient when spending money. This is about the efficiency of any heating and cooling installation that we have, but it is also about the efficiency of renovating homes and doing all of that at the same time, and also being really strict when it comes to new buildings all across the European Union. We have to make sure that the standards, and looking at and also what member states are spending in terms of social housing, anything where the state itself is involved. They have to pick up the responsibility that they have in order to say that anything that is new has to be a top in terms of insulation, in terms of energy efficiency, and we have to see this as one. This is one category that we have to talk about. We shouldn't be talking about it just from the district heating, geothermal energy perspective, but includes the buildings as well.
Totally agree. Miklos, please.
For me, it's very clear we have money to invest in these technologies, and of course, I want to say that it's true in Spain. Heating and cooling is important, but cooling is very important, much important than in other countries. For example, we are using gas in summer because we have to cool houses. So it's important to support schemes that makes this cooling system more efficient and not use fossil fuels. So this is where geothermal energy could support the energy integration of our system. I live in a region, a cold region in Spain, west, and of course we have rain and wind and a lot of renewables, but we belong to the whole Spanish mix. We don't need this cooling support. But I agree with you that we have to invest a lot of money to this integration. And I want to mention one thing. We have all these windfall profits of the last year in some companies. And my question is, are these companies investing all this money that they have earned in these recent months to put this money in renewables? Because this is what the main objective of the marginalist system, to give signals, to promote renewables. And I don't know if these windfall profits are invested in support energy efficiency. At the same time, we have the highest share of renewables last year. So we have
Okay.
more. At the same time, we have renewables. So And all these situations.
Okay, thank you, Nicholas. I had a bit of interference on my side from I don't know if that was from anyone else. What we'll do is we'll come back and ask you to make that point. But I'd like to bring in Nicholas now, who's been waiting patiently. Nicholas, please.
Yes, well, thank you for giving me the floor. Well, I would just to add what I said, because I brought up the we need in Europe not only heating but also cooling. So I am the guilty one. And then I would say that the solution, and which is also spreading out all over Europe, and I would say southern France, and I saw a project in southern Spain. There are smart grids, and also in the Netherlands. That means smart grids. These are geothermally sourced grids which could provide simultaneous heating and cooling depending on the user's need. And I've been working on a project, just to bring Spain as an example, in Madrid, where they need a part of the day heating and a part of the day cooling, because climate conditions are such. So this type of situations, and also complemented to what Claudia said, to thermally, to, let's say, energy efficient buildings. These are measures which could lead to a bigger share of geothermal into the heating and cooling system of our let's say households, and not only households but generally economy, because now we not only heat our houses and cool them but also our offices. So I think that these are possibilities which could completely eliminate geothermal, that could completely eliminate, wherever it is possible, the fossil fuel. And I just bring you an example that in France, and you no longer will be able to heat your new house with a fossil fuel starting July or June 2021. And the alternatives are there. There is electricity and there is heat pump, which is ground source heat pump or whatever, air-cooled heat pump. So it's some sort of renewable energy you will deploy in heating or cooling your house.
Thank you for that. And it's kind of got me thinking now, just if I was to if I hear correctly what we've just heard from you, from Claudia, and from Nicholas, that we need to think about system planning, but we need to think about putting everything, at the same time. We don't have the luxury of time. So that kind of mobilization that we're talking about means that we really need to have kind of people project managing the transition. If I hear that correctly, I think that's a really, really good point. And actually, I'm quite curious to know what is happening to the windfall profits. Are they actually being reinvested back into renewables? Maybe we should ask some utilities or about that later on. Pierre, can I bring you in at this stage now? We've heard a lot about the kind of the energy system and the transition, but a lot of this kind of electrification is based around lithium batteries. They are a crucial element for transport, but for your mobile phones, for the laptops that we have, also for kind of battery storage of renewable energy within households as well. So I'm quite curious to hear from you about what you think. I mean, you've talked a lot about the kind of the permitting and licensing side of things as well, but what more do we need to do to kind of secure a lithium battery value chain in Europe? What if you were to kind of have a wish list, your own communication, what would you ask for? What do we need?
Do you think maybe it will help if I can make the small or short presentation to answer your question? I have prepared a few slides so that basically you can. Sorry, so I have to share my screen. There you go.
Yes, we can see.
Yeah, but okay. As an introduction, I would like to thank Madame Gavin to say that basically geothermal is not only dedicated to district heating. I mean, there are many applications. And Arverne, with the owner of Lithium de France, basically is looking at two main projects. The surface geothermal, so that basically we can decarbonize not only district heating but also the private. So we are dealing with private people basically to get rid of gas or fuel and to install geothermal. but also for deep geothermal, we are basically focusing on heat geothermal for industrial, for agriculture, etc. And we combine this geothermal model to the lithium, the geothermal lithium. So I will explain what are basically the main barriers and what are our objectives. So in order to answer your question, Sanjeev, because for us it's a game changer and it's not very well known. So it's a bit frustrating basically to wait for such a crisis to enhance what could be within the mix and within the energy transition. We are fighting in Arverne, which is a small group and relatively new company. We are 5 years old, to show that all the subsurface has something to say in this mix and in this story. I mean, not only geothermal, not only lithium geothermal, but also CO2 storage and extraction of metals, of minerals. So we have a few projects. The main one is Lithium de France. And Lithium de France, sorry, is it working? Can you see the slide? Yeah. So, I mean, you all know the context, but there is a specific context in Alsace du Nord in France. We are a French company based in Strasbourg. The Graben, the Upper Rhine Graben in Alsace du Nord has a very long history in exploiting the subsurface. So it's not something new. People are not afraid of geothermal. There are many wells drilled since years, and there are about 15 wells of deep geothermal which have already been drilled in the region. And as we can see, not behind the geothermal potential, we have also some lithium. I mean, the concentration of lithium within the brines are quite high, ranging between 150 and more than 200 ppm, which is enough to say that there could be a model on top of the geothermal model, which is more or less economic, but it's quite complicated to see what could be the economics only for the geothermal, for the heat geothermal, because we are dealing with heat geothermal without the lithium. So on top of that, if we add the lithium, we could, I mean, observe some upside. And here we have a new model that could fit with the increasing need of lithium for the battery industry. You all know that a lot of more than 30 gigafactories in Europe will see. I mean, will take place within a few years, and they all need lithium. Lithium is coming today at more than 80% from China. So a French or European lithium, which will be low carbon, will be a game changer. But do we have the volume? The answer is yes. We do have, I mean, the volume that we calculate today, that we, I mean, with what we could say oil and gas approach with our internal model and with a volumetric approach, can show that we could be sufficient and autonomous for providing to the battery industry enough lithium, and again, which is a low carbon lithium. So our mission in Lithium de France is to launch a kind of industry or industrial sector for the production of low carbon lithium and supply, if we can, of course, 100% of the lithium for the Verkor, Volkswagen and Tesla, all the automobile players that basically are growing in Europe. This lithium has a specificity to come from geothermal. So we have a double model here where we extract the calorie and we will be in short circuit distributing the calorie to the industrial, agriculture or other players. And doing so, we create hundreds of jobs, again, on top of the lithium model, which is extracting and transforming the lithium before the offtake to the battery players. We could extend the project in Europe and in France, because especially in Auvergne, we can see some and we can observe some high content of lithium. So the model is here on this drawing. So we produce hot water, we distribute the calories, and also we extract the lithium. So it's a lot of capex, and if it doesn't happen now, it will never gonna happen. I mean, this is clear. I mean, there is such a pressure with a crisis, with a prices and everything that has been said related to the gas price. But also there is a momentum because there is a need to show that geothermal is a place and lithium is very. I mean, there is a stress on the lithium market. A lot of benefits on this model, of course, because we are dealing with it, and we are dealing with a metal that basically is very critical. Environmentally speaking, we think it's compared to the traditional extraction, it's again it's very clean because it's based on geothermal. So all the heat needed for the extraction of the lithium will come from our internal process of geothermal. Our ambition is more than 10 production sites in Alsace du Nord only. So we are today waiting for our first license. As I say, it's a bit complicated in France, and especially compared with what happened in Germany to get the license. And this is very problematic, especially for a player like us, because we are small. So it must change. I mean, it must be more efficient if we want to see other players come in and play on this lithium geothermal ground. So our roadmap, and you can see the figures, it's a bit confidential, but I mean, we are now trying to communicate, not on, of course, on the figures, but on the fact that by 2025, we'll be able to start producing. And as you can see at the plateau, we will produce more than 30,000 tons of lithium per year, which is a lot and which is enough to feed all the gigafactories in France. And in terms of calories, in terms of heat, it's huge. So we will deploy a lot of CapEx investment to distribute it. Again, it's not district heating, it's industrial heating. So by doing so, you create a lot of work of employees and value around this wells. So we are following a roadmap. I mean, we are, again, as I say, we will start exploration by a few months. And we will ask for other licenses just after. So that's the first. I mean, that's Lithium de France. And as I said, we have other companies in Arverne dealing with surface geothermal, not only deep geothermal. So what we call GME in France. You have players like Celsius or Accenta, and we see and we can observe something which is quite weak. Which is a very big hurdle is of course the resource, because it's more and more difficult to find the right, for example, drilling companies. So we decided to build and to buy some specific rigs that you can see here, so that we can deploy massively within France and hopefully after in Europe such type of rigs, so that the surface geothermal can benefit from decrease of cost and basically can occur wherever the region in France. We hope that we will get more than 50 or 60 rigs like this to deploy in locally, let's say, to be efficient and to be economic.
Pierre, sorry, can I just jump in with two quick questions for you? Thank you for that oversight. So if I understand this correctly, the lithium extraction process is always when you use a geothermal plant, either for heating or for power generation, for everything else. So it's always effectively two activities that we're looking for. And then there's a follow-up question to that, which is, I mean, when you were talking about funding, the EU has an innovation fund. We have just transition funds and things like that as well. Are you looking for European funding support as well as the French government? Where are you?
Yeah. Of course we do. I mean, otherwise we will not be able to start and to build the project. So, but today it's not the right time to do the application, because we will basically start to invest massively at the first drilling stage. Today we are exploring, so it's not the right time. But of course we are trying to see what will be the best investment or help coming, or support or financial support from Europe. So there are a lot. It's even difficult to basically to find the right ones. But yes, of course we do have the people who are dealing with Europe, and we are part of the European Batteries Alliance and many other stuff. To try to get some support.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that. Philippe, if I could ask you to share a slide. I mean, we've heard quite a lot of very rich materials, some really, really good ideas from all of our speakers, including the Commission, Ms. Simpson today. And I'm kind of keen to kind of wrap up. So if I could maybe ask you if you had like, you know, we know that there's going to be an additional follow-up coming out in May. We know there's an abundance of legislation on the table now. It's very confusing. It's hard to keep track of where, you know, what are the key things that need to change. We've had permitting a lot. We've had kind of financing a lot. We've had planning as well. We've heard also kind of combining buildings and renewables and energy efficiency, you know, all at the same time. And, you know, the word that Claudia used, which I actually think was quite, it's actually in many ways the key word, is that kind of mobilization, a mass mobilization, you know, without saying we're on a war economy, but to have that mentality of thinking big and thinking at scale. So I'm quite curious, Philippe, if you could maybe share one or two things on, you know, what the job like
Yes,
from the...
Indeed, we have today in this event learned a lot of good inspiring for the future, indeed from the commissioner, but also from Claudia Gammon. Indeed, I really enjoy what you are saying, that indeed this is possible. What we are asking for is possible. It's not something complex, and we have a big windows of opportunity. 2 years ago already, with a Green Deal, we see that we are able to increase ambition. I remember a decision 10 years ago, we should maximum have 28% renewables. No, just with a political will, we have been able to increase the target to 45%. But no, what we need to see is security of supply and affordability. And for that, I want just to start with sharing a good news. Is when we speak about heating and cooling, we are already a competitive source of heating and cooling. So this is a report from IEA from December 2021. It's already mentioning that geothermal is cheaper than gas. It's today the cheapest source of heating and cooling. So when we speak about energy transition, we don't speak only about renewable sources, we speak about affordability. And I think several panelists mentioned social housings, and just to remind that today energy poverty is a heating poverty. We don't speak of people lacking money for electricity. We speak of people not able to heating or cooling their housings. So when we speak about the transition, we need to look at what are the best options. And already in electricity, we mentioned PV wind as a good source of cheapest energy. In heating and cooling, we have geothermal heat pumps, ambient heat pumps, and other renewables also able today to provide affordability. Coming back to report EU plan, we have also developed our own EJEC action plan, and we have just 8 points to highlight as concluding this event. First, we need industrial strategy. We have mentioned heat pumps. Indeed, we need to accelerate the development of heat pumps, being geothermal or ambient heat. We have a big windows of opportunity. We are just starting spring, and the next winter will be in 6 months. In 6 months, we are able to install more than 1.5 or 2 million heat pumps. We are able to do that. Of course, we need several measures. The first measure, fast permitting, quick deployment. We have good examples. Claudia, you mentioned Austria. A good example is, for example, the Geothermal survey of Austria already promoting these traffic light systems. We have an easy system to install all over Europe. Or you can drill, you can develop your project, or you cannot. And that should be installed everywhere in Europe. And with fast permitting, we are able to develop these 2 million heat pumps by the end of the year. We need also to accelerate the heat networking planning. It was mentioned by Sanjeev. Indeed, heating and cooling is a planning. And in the next 6 months, by the end of the year, if we are able to have all the structure, and notably involving distribution system operator, DSO, will be able to faster the development. De-risking investment. We have mentioned investment several times today. Indeed, we need funding, but we need de-risking tools to allow the development of projects. And we have launched one idea. We need to deploy 1,000 geothermal cities which will be able to develop geothermal projects to supply electricity, combine heat and power, district heating, individual systems with heat pumps, but also, as Pierre mentioned, extracting some minerals like lithium. And for that, for sure, the industrial strategy needs to mobilize a large amount of people, and we need to mobilize a skilled workforce. In geothermal, we are quite lucky because we have many people already working on the underground from oil and gas that will be able to ensure this transition to geothermal. So we need upscaling, reskilling, and we need to have a skilled workforce. But we are able to do that because the people are there. To do that, we have two last proposals. Just recently, the European institutions has agreed with the taxation, notably VAT directive. We need to have a fair treatment, no more VAT reduction rate for fossil fuel, and to have zero VAT for renewables. This is taxation. We mentioned decoupling gas and electricity in taxation, but on VAT, we speak about 20% a lot of times, and it can really also faster the development. And last but not least, you mentioned Sanjeev Innovation Fund, but in general, we need to faster the development of geothermal and renewable lithium cooling to industry. Pierre also mentioned that heat purchase agreement, innovation fund, and overfunding will be key in the future. So you can see here, it's our 8 points of the Report EU plan. It will be officially launched in the afternoon. And here you can see what we are asking for. We have these big windows of opportunity by the end of 2022. We understand from the Council last week in Versailles, we need to reduce by 2/3 the gas imports. 80% of our gas is used for heating and cooling, not for electricity. 80% of the gas is used for heating and cooling. We need to focus activities 2022 on heating and cooling. Heat pumps, district heating, combined heat and power will be key, and we are able to do that in 6 months.
Thank you so much, Philippe, for that overview. I'd like to. I'm conscious of the time now, so if I could just ask everyone to give, a one-sentence response. What do we need to do on top of the Repower EU communication? What's the one thing you would like that you think would be able to drive the kind of things that we've heard today from all of our various speakers? So I'm going to start with Claudia. Claudia, ladies first, please.
The one thing, to change the political narrative, to show the options. What has been very disappointing to me the last 2 weeks has been that some people show, especially for heating in private households, gas is something that has no alternative, and we need to educate more people and do this quickly. That I think is the most important point.
Brilliant, thank you so much. Pierre.
Sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Oh, sorry, Pierre. What's the one thing you think needs to happen from the new communication in May, the new legislation in May from the European Commission that would help drive the geothermal lithium story?
Well, I mean, lithium, everybody knows. I mean, we don't need to communicate on that. I mean, there is a lot of need. We have off-takers, we have investors. What we see, the weak point is the geothermal. Of course, I mean, it's very difficult to make understand what the power of geothermal is. As each time I show basically this presentation of when I talk about lithium geothermal, people just hear lithium. But for me, the backbone of the project is geothermal. It's much more powerful than lithium. Lithium is, of course, there is a huge momentum, but geothermal is really, in my opinion, and in my project, more important than lithium. But it's much more difficult. So all the let's say mechanism like the heat, if there is a kind of take or pay on the heat at the beginning, or this kind of mechanism will be really helpful to start the project and to show the investor that we can be economic in not only lithium but also geothermal.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. Philippe, do you have, if you were to, we've had the Commission around the table, we've had members of the European Parliament. Of all the things that EDGEC's been asking for, what's the one thing you think is going to change the conversation?
Yeah, I think it has been mentioned in the past, in the previous discussion. We need security for investment. We have people like Pierre from Arven, they are willing to invest. We have an industry willing to invest. We need security for investment. So I think what we have seen with increasing ambition from the Commission, but also it will be, we hope, approved by the European Parliament. We need more ambition targets, but we need also other clear signal. We need a fair treatment. We cannot continue with giving fossil fuel subsidies, with not having carbon pricing. I mentioned geothermal, we are already competitive. What we are lacking is not a source of energy. We can provide 25% of the heating and cooling demand, so we have a resource. We are affordable, but we cannot develop because there's not enough fair treatment. The internal market on gas and electricity only, not doing each market is killing us. We are 1% of the market. We can be 25%. What is the problem? Is the market conditions which are today the problem. And of course, we have a lot of good proposals in the Fit for 55. We hope it will be enough, but let's continue to have this fair transition with renewable and with geothermal.
Absolutely. And Miklos, as the president of EGEC, as the kind of the leader of the geothermal community across Europe, what's the one thing you think that's going to radically change geothermal? We've had so many great ideas today. What's your contribution?
Yeah, well, the thing will change for us is the crisis. Well, if you look in the past, all geothermal development has taken place when oil crisis picked up. If you look at the Paris Basin, we look back for 40 years of development now, and we have the biggest district heating system in the world. We look at the positive examples that drive what the Bavarian community has in Munich to decarbonize and convert the whole district heating system into geothermal. We see the Dutch example for the greenhouse owners. So it is possible. Energy, geothermal energy is renewable. It's sustainable, it's proven, it's achievable. There is no doubt of it. And the one thing we need, it is to, as Philip said, it is to be considered as an energy supplier, as any other, without discrimination and without putting into let's say into the brackets the political or industrial needs of someone else. This is what we need, and be a real industry. This is what we need.
Brilliant. Thank you very, very much. Well, on behalf of all of our panelists, I'd like to thank you very much for your excellent contribution to a very rich discussion. I'd like to thank everybody who's stayed on. We're a few minutes that have run over time. Apologies for that. And I want to leave you with a summary of Miklos's just words. You know, we are in a crisis, but we have to turn this crisis into an opportunity to change the face of the geothermal industry, but also to change the way in which we address the climate crisis, the energy transition crisis, and a multitude of other things. You know, let's think about the ways in which we can make positives out of the crisis that we have ahead of you. And on that note, thank you very, very much, everybody, for your participation. We look forward to seeing you again at future events. Our report will be launched later on today, so we will tweet. So look out for our tweets, and have a wonderful afternoon. Thank you and goodbye. Bye-bye.